Welcome to episode 181 of the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals where you can strengthen your creative business, stay up to date on industry news, and build connections within our supportive trade association. Check it out at craftindustyalliance.org. Today on the show, we're talking about building an embroidery business with my guest, Anne Oliver. For Anne of Lolli and Grace, drawing, painting, and crafts have been a part of her life since almost the very beginning. She spent several years out of college working at a small independent craft store, a dream job for sure, and then started her own business, hand painting clothing, custom murals, and furniture. For her, color has always been a source of inspiration. And years later, serendipity led her to blend that love of color with embroidery, designing, and writing to offer hand embroidery patterns and kits for all levels of stitchers. She's been featured in several publications, including Homespun magazine and the Better Homes and Gardens Christmas Crafts issue. Anne Oliver, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm super excited to talk to you. As you know, I've been following your work for many years. You have a really beautiful and very distinctive aesthetic. It's one of those accounts on Instagram where as soon as you see it, you know exactly who it belongs to, which is actually pretty hard to achieve and something I definitely want to talk to you about. But let's start kind of back in the beginning. It sounds like you've been crafty your whole life. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Dallas, Texas, which is actually where I still am. I'm sort of back here. And so I'm a Texas girl and a lot of good things about that. And so, yeah, I tell people I can actually remember my very first craft project. And I was probably in preschool, like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I distinctly remember it. And it was like this little jar where you painted this paint on it, and then I guess you put a blow dryer on it, and it kind of crystallized. It was red, and I was captivated, even at such a young age, about this thing where you got to take color and paint and some other object and make this beautiful thing with it. But yeah, then a little bit later on, I started drawing. I just spent years just drawing. I was horse crazy, and I had a good friend that lived across the alley from me, and we would spend all summer long she was horse crazy, drawing, just pencil, number 2 pencil, and a sketchbook.
Yeah, and I knew girls like that when I was in school. Yeah. The girls who drew horses. Yep.
Yeah, that was us all the time. And then we had a really neat opportunity in 6th grade. Our teacher had introduced us to what was called I believe it was a sunset project. So in our schooling at 6th grade was where you went through K through 6, and then after 6, you moved on to junior high. So it was our last year at this elementary school, same school that my daughter actually went through too. So that's a sort of a neat circle thing. But anyway, it was a big mural. So we were the first ones to do it. It was her idea. And so it was 1976. Of course, that dates me. But so we did the bicentennial. And so we did this, we took part of the cafeteria wall, and we painted this big mural of 1776. And so I got to be on the committee that helped draw it, along with my horse-loving friend, whose name was also Abby, by the way.
Ah.
And so we got to get out of class and go stand on the scaffolding and paint on this wall. And we were featured in the little local newspaper. And that was just so much fun. And I didn't realize how that was sort of a preview to what I was going to do later in life for a while there. But anyway, so then, went on up through school. In college, I did a lot of cross stitch. Cross stitch was big in the 80s, so that's what I was doing. But college was busy. I was an English major, and so even so busy in college, I didn't even have time to read for pleasure, even though I'm a voracious reader. I had to stop doing that because you're just busy reading for class and things. But anyway, did a lot of cross stitch, liked cross stitch, but found it to be a little stressful because of all the counting. And if you're off by one number, the whole thing is off. And
I'm wondering why you didn't major in art, because it just sounds like you were obviously very interested in art all the way through school before college, but then you went on to be an English major. Was someone in your life telling you that that was more practical?
It was my own misguided thinking. And I look back now and I kick myself. I'm like, what was I thinking? Because I specifically said to myself, oh, I don't want to do, I mean, this just shows how young I was and unclear about how the world worked. But I was like, I don't want to do art for someone else, like a client. I just want to do art for me. And I don't know why I didn't. And I did end up taking some art classes, which I loved. And even in that short time, I learned some wonderful techniques. But looking back, don't get me wrong, I love having my English degree because it helped me. It even helps me now. I definitely writing patterns. I do not regret that at all. But why did I not get an art degree where I could have just learned the techniques that I could have applied to anything? Back then, there was no internet to, research things and get a view of what other people are doing. And there was no Instagram and no Pinterest. So you had to sort of either know things or know someone who taught you things. I thought that art was a very narrow path at the time, that it was going to be, commercial art, working for a client and doing what they wanted to do. Very misguided. Wish I had made a different decision, at least added a minor in art, but I didn't. So anyway, that's why I didn't do art in college, unfortunately.
Okay, yeah, but that makes sense.
And learner. I'm on a long arc here.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously we're lifelong learners, so it's okay, right? So yeah, so you came out of college, and is the art and crafts store that you went to work for still around?
Unfortunately, it's not.
Okay.
This was the time when Michaels was huge. Hobby Lobby was not around then. Joanne Fabrics, they were more fabrics than crafts like they are now at the time. But Michaels was huge. But yes, it was these two women owned this store. Well, they had purchased it. It was called Arnold's. And if anyone's ever lived in Dallas during that time, they're probably familiar with it. But it was just the coolest place. Another man had started it. They bought it from him when he, I guess, wanted to retire. And it was like this little, it had all these nooks and crannies and these neat decorations in the store and like different pathways through it. And cool. I had a gazebo inside, which is where the registers were, and like a cart with candy on it. It was just so cool. And they were advertising for someone to come do their displays. And I was like, well, maybe I can. Anyway, I was in there shopping, and I saw the sign, and I talked to them. And this was a big deal for me because I was at the time I called myself shy. I think I was like an introvert. So speaking out and like promoting myself and stepping forward was like hard for me. And, but I interviewed for this job, and they were like, yeah, sure, I think you can do this. Well, it turned out to be such a neat opportunity. And I worked there for, I don't know the total number of years, maybe 8 or 9 years. And,
oh, wow. That's a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. But I ended up, working back in the back part, which was like the paints and the crafts and jewelry. And, again, it was the late 80s, and decorating clothes, painting clothes, decorating with all sorts of everything.
I remember the days of like splatter painting and jean jackets and all that. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Oh yeah.
So that was all that. But for me, it was a chance to, obviously, well, let me jump back a minute. I used to say, going into Michael's, like, boy, my dream job would be to work at a craft store and like work with all these craft things. Well, then, so now here I am working in a craft store, and not just any craft store, this amazing little wonderful craft store. And so I'm getting to help customers pick out paints for their projects, and I'm learning about every product and doing jewelry and painting on shirts and, just ordering the supplies. And so it was just and the people were wonderful, of course. So it was a really, really great, and I did the displays too, along with that. So that, was a sort of a different section of my brain to display items up in the front of the store. And that was neat. So yeah, it was really, really a wonderful opportunity.
It almost sounds like, it was like another education in a way. Like you had this English education, and I asked you why you didn't go to art school or get an art degree, but it's almost like this second education that you had in like retail craft.
Very much so. And I also was I was thinking that I also started creating the patterns for the people to like paint their shirts. And I realize again that now plays into exactly what I'm doing now. And so, yes, it was very much an education. It was working with people, which was good for me, like I said, as an introvert, to like really interact with people who were trying to learn something or pick out a color or learn a craft or how to do something and do multiple kinds of things. And yeah, it was just such an education. And you asked if they are still open. I wish they were. That the two women that owned it, they got later in life, and so they ended up closing it. And but what's funny is that I still dream about that place. It was obviously such a formative time. I still to this day have dreams where I'm like, I'm the age I am now, and I go back and I'm walking through the store and I'm saying hi to the people I know, and I'm like, oh, I love this section of the store. And I mean,
That's funny.
it's like a recurring dream. So obviously it was a very formative time. I know if I dream about something a lot, it was a formative time for me.
That's funny. Yeah. So, okay. So that's great though. And I've talked to several other guests on this show who've had that retail experience, whether they've worked in a yarn shop for several years or they've worked in a quilt shop for some time, and just that experience of understanding, how to order products from manufacturers and understanding how that works, understanding displays, and also just talking and interacting with customers and seeing, what their questions are. And that has been incredibly informative to them when they've gone on to then work in the industry. And so I do think that that's a thread to follow for people who are thinking about how they might sort of enter. That is a way to enter and get a really great education. So just something for people to keep in mind. Yeah, it's so
and
cool.
on the face of it, it doesn't look like a very similar path to what I do now, which is, work at home and create my own stuff. But I look back now and I see all of the things I learned then, as you say, that I'm feeding into what I'm doing now. Like you say, ordering products, stocking, how much to stock, when to order things, how to, contact the suppliers or how to find them. Of course, like I said, there was no internet then. So, but yeah, so many things feed into in subtle ways sometimes and in very big ways, foundational ways into what I do now.
Yeah, so cool. Okay, great. So it sounds like you maybe had a child somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And motherhood changes things for sure.
Oh gosh, yes, it does. I had like I said, I mentioned before, in the bio you read that when I left working there, I did start my own little business, painting murals and furniture. That was and I actually did shirts too. I painted a lot of shirts and sold them to some local stores here. So that too was also kind of a preview of a learning process. And so, yeah, I spent some time doing that. And I did have my daughter a little bit later in life. But yeah, the adjustment from being a crafter who had all the time in the world to think about things and get something accomplished to suddenly I have 5 minutes to accomplish something. And I just want to get started, you have to stop. That was a difficult adjustment. And I remember thinking I was just so thirsty for something creative. I loved being a mother. She was a great kid, loved having a baby, loved staying home with her. But there was also this part of me that was desperate for something to do something creative and to use that creative part of my brain and my hands and, think about a creative endeavor that is so different from raising a child, raising a baby, being at home with the baby. And it was a difficult adjustment. Just the chunks of time were different. Before I had large chunks of time. Suddenly you have, like I said, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 45 minutes while they're asleep. And she was not always the best napper. So I'd be like, just when I got into the groove, she's awake. And I'm like, okay, I have to drop this. So that was different. And also learned some lessons about how to think about how you use your time, or how to, what's good time and what's, not productive time. But yeah, it's gotten easier as she's gotten older. She's 17 now, so that's a different time of its. I mean, different in its own way. So now it's flipped. Now I'm busy with work, but now I'm like, I don't want to do this. She's about to be gone to college. I
Yeah.
just did a college visit yesterday, so it's like I'm going to put aside my work to go spend my time with her. And so I've been
Right.
blessed to be able to spend so much time with her. It's been wonderful.
Yeah, totally. I now have two teenagers. I have a freshman and a junior and a 9-year-old. So, right, I'm entering that second phase. So I
Yeah.
hear you.
And oddly enough, not oddly enough, I actually have another daughter, which is a much longer story. She's in her 30s. She's married. She has two daughters of her own, but she's actually adopted. I'll make this a very long story and make it very short. She was a cousin of mine, and we helped raise her when she was young. And when she got older, her relationship with her own parents was not great. And as she got older and she got married and had a child, she was like, I want you guys, my husband and I, to be my parents. And I want, Gracie, my daughter, to be my sister. Will you formally adopt me? And so we spent several years exploring that and like how that was going to work. And so several years back, we actually formally adopted her. It was a wonderful day to go and stand in front of a judge with a 30 something. And he was looking at us like, well, we're in the family court with divorces and custody battles and all this really sad news. And here's this family that wants to come together and be adopted. And he was like, this is really wonderful for me. I don't usually have
Oh,
this happen.
yeah.
So I have two daughters. I have to say I have two daughters. So
That's wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's all different ways to have a family. So that's great. That is really great to hear. Okay, so all right, so here we are. You have had these sort of varying craft experiences, craft careers that have sort of started and stopped for different reasons. And you're at home, you're craving to use your hands again and use your creative brain again, as you said. And so it's, I think your first foray, and I think maybe the first way that I connected with you is through doll making, because I, as I think some listeners will know, am a doll maker and love to make dolls and toys. And that was how I got into crafting, back in 2005. And I think you were making handmade dolls as well. And I think that's how I found you.
Yes, that's true. I was just sort of puttering around in doing just different kind of crafts, and it's so funny. I don't know if it was just like a bolt of lightning, or if it was a culmination of years and years and years of things, maybe both. But almost literally one day, I said to myself, I kind of want to do something with embroidery and wool felt. I don't know what that would be, but Instagram had kind of started by that time, and Pinterest had definitely started by that time. And I was like, I just think I want to kind of maybe try some embroidery and wool felt. And that kind of came together with dolls. And so yeah, wool felt dolls and embroidery. And I started this business. It was called Lolli Dolls at the time. And yes, so that's what started out how I got here. And it's so funny. It was just like this kind of bolt of inspiration, and I came up with patterns for 3 dolls, and I was thinking to myself, I don't know, maybe somebody else would want to make these too. And I just was kind of making them to fulfill my own desires to, like I said, work with wool felt and embroidery. I was like, maybe I can try selling them, maybe I will. And Etsy was going at that time, and so I just kind of dipped a toe in, and a couple people wanted to buy them, and then here I am.
So were they patterns from the get-go, or were you actually trying to sell finished dolls?
It was patterns.
Okay.
I knew that for me, I am sometimes a perfectionist, and I like to put a lot of detail, and I knew that I would not be able to. I mean, I probably could have. I mean, people sell beautiful dolls, beautiful high-end dolls for lots of money, and are very successful at it. And so there is a market for it, obviously. But I just knew for me that I didn't want. I just thought to myself, maybe sell a couple of finished, but mostly I wanted to sell the patterns. I knew that for me, I deal better with sort of shorter projects that I can see the finish of them. That's why I didn't become a quilter. I love fabric, and I know how to sew, and I tried to quilt, but for me, I knew I was never going to actually finish one. And
Yeah.
so to do a shorter project, so the dolls I was designing were longer, and I did make the patterns for them. The patterns are like 30, 50 pages long because I talk a lot when I type out how to do instructions. And I just thought patterns for me were going to be just a clearer path for me. Although I did sell some finished dolls too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's how I found you in the beginning. And then though, right, you don't do dolls now. So obviously, and the name of your business changed. It's not Lolli
Yes.
Dolls. It's Lolli and Grace. So there was a shift that you made. And I think that, sometimes when we start a business, and then somehow realize, wait a minute, we're maybe not on the right path. Maybe there's not as much of a product market fit, right? In other words, maybe you try something different and the different thing sells better because maybe it's quicker to make, it's easier for people to understand, it's more appealing or whatever. And so it can be scary to make that change, and so I'm just wondering what happened where you saw, okay, wait a minute, I need to move away from my original idea. I need to make this change and how that felt for you.
It was scary, you're right. And fortunately, it wasn't like I was 10 years into this, I wasn't so deep into dolls only that it was that much of a shift, but it was a shift. And, it's scary to change your name and your everything. What little what little market I had, customer base I had found at the time, I'm like, I feel like I'm abandoning them and I'm just going to go this direction. I'm going to be like, well, I don't care about that. I don't want to follow you anymore. It is very scary. But for me, it was both of those things you mentioned. It was both, what are people going to be? Well, for me, it was like a larger target market. Like I said, there's a market for dolls, but it's much more of a niche market. And hand embroidery patterns and stitching and embroidery in general, there's a huge market, huge customer base. There's quilters that do it, and there's sewers that do it, and there's cross stitchers that do it, and there's people that have never done it before feel like, yeah, I can pick that up and I can do that. So many more opportunities to find people, like-minded people. And personally, for me, I love the dolls. I to this day, I still come up with ideas for dolls. I would love to do, explore that. But I actually have, it's much better now, but there was a while there where I have rheumatoid arthritis and where stuffing the dolls, I like my dolls stuffed very tightly.
Oh, me
And
too. They're
it was
rock
killing.
hard.
Yes, they're rock hard. And that takes a lot of hand strength.
It
And by the
does.
time I was done, even just making like the one for the demo, like, oh, my hands are killing me. I hate stuffing. How can I love dolls, making dolls, and love the stuff? I mean, love making the dolls, hate the stuffing part. It's like, I don't know that I can do this forever. So that also led me to, and plus, like I mentioned, I do better with smaller, shorter term projects. And I knew an embroidery hoop, I can totally be happy with that from beginning to end. And even now, by the end of a project, I'm like putting the last stitches in, thinking, I cannot wait to start the next one. I'm ready to be done with this because I am excited about the next one. So it all just was a better fit for me personally.
Right. It's so interesting. And I think just finding that wider audience also, it helps maybe to build the business that you wanted. Right. Which is not necessarily everybody's business, but it was the business that you wanted for a lot of the reasons that you just described. Okay. So you did make that shift and so describe the sort of products that you have, in your line now, like what is, as far as the patterns are concerned, because you have some other things that you carry too, but what is Lolli and Grace as far as patterns are concerned? I guess maybe both patterns and kits. What is in there now?
Yeah, for all of my things, I pretty much generally have both a PDF pattern available and a kit. Not for every single thing for a kit, but most of them. And it's generally embroidery hoops that are either small ones or larger ones, like 8-inch ones. And then I also sort of concurrently have a line of wool felt Christmas or ornaments, not always Christmas. So there's that wool felt and embroidery piece from when I first started, because I still love working with wool felt. And I kind of have a personal history with felt ornaments. I always, every year, and I've just sort of am wrapping up the ones I've done for this year. I'm about to release 3 more new Christmas ornaments, wool felt ornaments. But as a child, again, jumping back, I remember my mother and my sister and I spent a day making felt Christmas ornaments, like with the sequins and the, very 1970s. And I just so clearly remember that day. And I still have so many of those ornaments, like it's a little snowman, a little Santa, a little bell. And I loved that so much, that not just doing it with my mom and my sister, but hanging them on the tree every year, and then now having them in that memory. That's why every year I create more wool felt ornaments. And now I'm doing for other holidays, other, Easter and things too. So that's why it's sort of like these two sort of things, the embroidery designs and the ornaments. So those two things. So yeah, that's basically it. And the doll patterns are still in there. I leave them in there. The first 3 that I created originally are still there, and I still sell them. I don't market them necessarily, but people are still looking for them, so they do still sell occasionally. It's always really sweet to see. It's like, oh, I sold a doll pattern from way back when.
And then you've expanded into also including some supplies. Like you have a really adorable line of needle minders, for example. Yeah. And are these products that you're designing and having manufactured, or are these things that you're sourcing?
A little bit of both, mostly sourcing. When I first introduced some needle minders, and if someone's not familiar, a needle minder is just a little object, usually a little flat object that has a magnet on the back, and you put a washer on the back, and so you clip it. Basically, you stick it onto your embroidery hoop so that when you're not stitching with your needle, you can just pop your needle on there, and it holds your needle, keeps your needle from like having to stick it in the arm of a couch or whatever, or the middle of your fabric, hold it while you're not stitching. So that's what a needle minder is. So when I first started them, I did design, I think 3 or 4 designs that I, again, made out of wool felt, and I pulled out my stash of beads, and you have to kind of work very small because they can't be too big. So you have to think small with that when you're designing. But I made like a couple of moths and a rainbow, and they take a lot of time, and I love doing it. And they sold out immediately. I haven't had a chance to, again, I've got designs floating around in my head. I haven't had a chance to make more of them, but I do have a whole line of ones that I've sourced. And that's been fun to just try to figure out, what do people want? Are llamas still in? They are. Coffee, that's a big thing. So yes, and the supplies has been sort of a natural progression. So hoops and needles and, twill tape for wrapping your hoop, and what are the things that I'm trying to bring in things that I use and love every single day, so that I know why stitchers would want to use them, and I know they're good quality.
And then when you create a kit, you're not just throwing a bunch of stuff into a box and sending it out. You have a very thoughtful way of putting the items together. And so the unboxing experience for the customer is truly special. So could you describe what it looks like so that when somebody gets the kit from Lolli and Grace, they are having this, what I would describe as really memorable experience? Because I think that that's what brings people back, and what, has people, for example, gifting this product to their friends, because it does really make a sweet gift, especially during the pandemic, for the holidays, etc.
Well, first, thank you for saying that, because I did put and do still put a lot of thought into how it's packaged. And my husband kind of lovingly kids me about how I was sending out a bunch one time, and I was like, can you help me tape these, because I'm like, this is going crazy and I just need some help. And I was like, no, honey, that tape is wrinkled I'm gonna talk about the packing tape on the outside of the box, right? I'm like, no, honey, I don't like it wrinkled. You just please let me do that part. And so he kids me now because my labels have to be straight, and I'm not too obsessive about it, but I like it to look really nice. And so now I'm like, honey, see, this lady, this very nice customer wrote me this note that said, I loved opening your package. I could tell how much care you took with it. I was like, see, honey, it's worth it. But yes, and I do enjoy putting when I'm first deciding like how I'm going to package all the items together in the kit. I'm like, I'm going to put this piece here, and this is going to fit in this section of the bag. And yeah, I can't just throw it in a bag. I just can't, and how am I going to, how the thread's going to be laid out. And when I lay out all the threads, I like all the labels to be up, and it does take time, I will admit, but you get faster at it as you figure out your system. But I do, and then, I like to write. I'm also a photographer. I spent years learning photography, which, again, one of those things, did not see me using it like this, but I am so grateful every single day that I spent several years learning photography, because I use it every day for product photography. That's huge in this very visual online selling. You've got to have good photos, right? Anyway, I put a card in there that's like a floral photo that I've taken, and I write a little handwritten note on the back, a thank you note with their name on it, and a little sticker. And so yeah, I do, and I do love it when I get orders for gifts, and I get to write the note that says, Mom, so sorry we can't see you right now, but hopefully this will make your day brighter. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. and during this pandemic, kits have obviously been a huge thing. You just get all the supplies delivered to you, and you don't have to go shop for them. Even though shopping online is a thing for everyone, it's so nice to be able to just have it arrive at your doorstep, and you can open it up and you can just start.
Yeah, absolutely. And there, we have an article which I'll link to that we wrote at Craft Industry Alliance about your business. And there are some pictures in that article of the packaging of your kits. So if people are curious to kind of see what that photo card looks like and the tape and all the rest, you can come take a look, because it is really very pretty. And I think for people who are sort of looking for some inspiration, like how can I make my tissue look nice, etc., it is definitely worth checking out for sure. And you're right that kits have been really huge during the pandemic, when it's difficult to go to multiple places to shop for supplies. So that's huge. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your product photography, because well, first of all, why did you study photography those years back when you weren't necessarily having an online business? Were you just interested? Did you just have like a hobby of learning photography on your own?
I did. It sort of started with scrapbooking, like I think for many people. My daughter was young at the time. She was like 18 months old, which is the worst time to learn how to do child photography, because they don't sit still. But yes, I wanted to photograph her. She's born. I'm taking these snapshots on these, those early digital cameras. And I'm like, why is everybody so gray and splotchy? That doesn't look like, I don't like that. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to photograph her. So it started like that. There was people may be familiar with there was a huge scrapbooking site called 2 Peas in a Bucket. So I was on the scrapbooking site, and I'm like, oh, there's a photography, section of it. So I ended up being more involved on the photography section. And in fact, ended up that the core group of people that came from that whole site is gone now, unfortunately. But, that core group of photography friends that I've made, we're still together. We still have a group, and we hardly ever talk about photography anymore. But, we're all these online friends. I've got people in Australia and all across the country, all different walks of life and beliefs, but we all come together about, just life now and photography and a little bit of photography. But anyway, that's what started it. And so then I did spend years, and I did do a little bit of client photography at the time. But then my daughter got a little older, and she could hit that age where she's like, I don't want you to photograph me anymore. So I was kind of lost my model that I could say, put these clothes on, and we're going to go out to this place, and we're going to do a photo shoot. She was like, no, Mom. So she got a little older, and I was like, I got to find something else to photograph that will, do what I want it to do. So I kind of got into still life, floral still life. I love flowers. Obviously, I could design floral patterns all day long, every day. But so I started doing flowers, and so I got into a little bit more macro photography, which is super, super up close, with that really shallow depth of field, so for non-photography people, that's when there's just like one little part of the flower is in focus and the rest that's in front of that or behind that is real softly blurred out. I love that look. So I started teaching myself more macro photography, and then along with that, still life photography. Again, not knowing that how handy that would come in when now I'm ready to photograph, a product. So I already knew how to deal with lighting and editing and Photoshop and how to, arrange things in a pleasing manner for flat lays. It's so funny. I don't often look back on my life as like an arc, but as I'm talking about it with you, I'm seeing all these things that I thought were kind of random and didn't really have a larger purpose, perhaps at the time. It was just something I wanted to do. I'm using all of them now, which is kind of cool now that I think about it. But yeah, that's how I got into photography. And it's invaluable. It is really, and I have this sort of all my life with crafts or whatever anything artistic that I've picked up, I had this kind of false sense of, I like teaching myself things. So I don't mind, reading books or looking at tutorials about how to learn something new. And generally, things that I pick up, I would teach myself and be generally pretty successful at it at the beginning. Photography, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to learn how to do photography and be a good photographer. And it'll take a couple of months, but I'll get it. Photography is a much different beast, and it takes a little bit longer to really grasp all of it and get the experience you need. So it took me longer than I thought. It didn't take a couple of months to really get to where I wanted. But again, all that time spent was worth it. But yeah, photography is really, really important. And on Instagram, it's so visual. On Pinterest, definitely for selling. I mean, if you're going to sell something, people want to see it, and they want to see it up close, and they want to see it, brightly lit and with good color. And so very, very important photography, I'd say.
And what about learning layout and graphic design as far as creating diagrams for your patterns? And do you use InDesign, or how do you create the patterns that you sell, the PDF patterns?
Yeah, when I really got serious about patterns, I was very conversant in Photoshop, having spent, these years working on photography. And you can do some graphic stuff in Photoshop, so I was comfortable there. But I remember asking, in fact, I went on my photography group, my P's that we call each other P's. I was like, how do you guys, have y'all seen those patterns where the lines look really nice and everything's so professional? I said, I was Photoshop. It was just so cumbersome. And one of those lovely people who was familiar, she's like, oh, that's Illustrator. She said, you really should probably switch to Illustrator. I was like, oh, okay. Illustrator is also a beast, one of those programs that has, you can do anything in it, but there's a learning curve. And especially at first for me, I was they're very similar. They're both Adobe, and they're both in the Adobe Creative Suite. But I was trying to use Photoshop commands or keystrokes, and they're kind of similar but not quite in Illustrator. So I remember it was a January when I said, okay, I'm going to teach myself Illustrator. This was probably now, 3 years ago. And I started in January, and I spent about a month pulling my hair out, screaming obscenities at my computer. It's like, I can't get this to work. Why aren't you just doing what I want you to do? But again, like anything, it was worth persevering and looking at all the tutorials and asking opinions about how do I do something, and just slaving away in front of the computer, figuring out Illustrator. Obviously, there's so much to learn. You can never know all of it. But, getting more comfortable with how to, create the design. So for me, here's my process. You didn't really ask this, but here's my process. I still like to go back to paper and pencil at the beginning. I just can't start on the computer. I started learning Procreate, but I'm still comfortable with getting out a piece of tracing paper and a pencil and a soft eraser and just sketching out the plan and my idea and, what it's going to look like. And so then I take that sketch, I scan it, and then I bring it into Illustrator. And then I, go over it with the pen tool, and I create a nice, create each element in a nice, clear line format. And then that's when I can resize it and move it around and adjust or delete or, move things around. So then it's in Illustrator, and then that's how I get the final pattern from Illustrator.
Okay. And then when you're going about writing the instructions, is that laid out also in Illustrator?
No, that I do that. I'm on a Mac, so I use Pages.
Pages. Okay. Yeah. I was just wondering about the last piece. Okay.
Right. So that's all done in Pages. Again, that's where my English degree helps, so I can write, competently. And, I sometimes I've wondered, am I too wordy? Because I had an experience when I was very first starting dolls way back then, there was a wonderful pattern designer and I love her stuff, but I ordered a pattern and I was like, this is going to be so much fun. And I got a pattern and I paid, I think, $8 for it. And I got it and I was disappointed. The doll itself was adorable, but the pattern was like 2 pages and it was, like a couple of hand-drawn diagrams, and the instructions were like, sew the 2 pieces together. And I thought, I knew how to work with my hands. I could figure it out. It's not that I couldn't figure it out, but I thought to myself, I just wanted a little more information, some more detail. Are there any tips for how to sew the 2 pieces together? Is there something you want to avoid or something you want to make sure that you do while you're sewing it's not like it was a complicated thing, but I just felt, I just thought I was going to get more, right? So I vowed right then, if I ever write my own patterns, they're going to be nice and complete, And so they do tend to be longer. And my motto now is that I'm going to write a pattern so that if a beginner gets it, they're not flailing. Like when you say do something, you're going to at least give me the basics about how to do it. If you're an experienced stitcher and you don't need that information, that's great. You can just skip that part. Or maybe you'll learn something, different from the way you've done it before. And you'll be like, oh, that's a different way to do that. Maybe I'll try that. I like it or don't like it, but whatever. The information is there. So that experience helped me form how I write my patterns. I like to give the information about, complete supply list and how to prepare things and a little tip for how to make this situation better and how to avoid this problem that can arise. And then there's links to supplies. And then every step has a photo, basically, that, step 1, do this. And then there's a photo for, here's a picture about how to do that thing, or here's what it looks like when it's finished. So yeah, my patterns tend to be a little bit longer, but I'm okay with that. They take time, but I wouldn't have it any other way, really.
Yeah. And I think it's a great idea if you are just getting into patterns to buy patterns from other makers whose patterns you like, whose finished products, the doll or the embroidery or whatever it might be, you like, and try to make them and see how the experience is. It's informative and, it's doing research and it's helpful. I definitely did that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, it's something you should do. It's, looking at the competition, understanding what the market is offering and thinking about how you can differentiate your product. It's absolutely okay to do that and something you should be doing. So,
Definitely,
so get out there.
You're so right about the differentiation that you can, and it's what can you do to make yours, like you say, not just different, but to really promote it. That it's not just, like you say, not just stuff thrown in a bag. You can say, this is a beautiful gift, or these instructions are very thorough. You won't be left hanging, So exactly. You're exactly right.
Same thing with kits. If you're going to do some kits, order some kits, spend $75, $100, order, a variety of kits that are similar to the kind of kits you might want to do. See what the unboxing experience is like. Look at what's inside. Look at the quality of materials, and make them. Go ahead and make them up and see what it's like as a user, because it is super helpful. Take some notes and think about what you would want to do. I think that's great. That's really great advice. And then as far as building your following, and you've done a really great job, and obviously you have a lot of skills, which we've talked about, to do that. But one of the things that you've done really nicely is build this very hefty following on Instagram, which I think a lot of people would look at and say, oh, wow, I wish I could do that. I think you have something upwards of 30,000 followers. Last time I checked, correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere around there on Instagram on the Lolli and Grace account. And if anyone were to go and see, it's no wonder. The photography is very beautiful. As I said, it's very recognizable. When you do, for example, post a text overlay on a picture, the font is always the same. It's, two different fonts, but they're always the same fonts and they're the same colors, and the consistency is really remarkable. So I wondered if you could talk a little bit about your Instagram strategy, like how often do you post and what kinds of things do you post? And I know some people I've talked to have said, well, how do I post so often? I don't have something to say every day, or I don't have new work every day. Like, how could I possibly share so much when I don't have something in progress to share all the time? So how you kind of get over that hurdle as well.
Well, those are all such good points about Instagram. And I'll say I struggle with the exact same thing. I mean, when I'm working on a pattern, well, let me go back. When I first started, I've talked about how all these things I did in my previous life have helped me now. Instagram totally had nothing to base anything how to deal with social media or Instagram. I mean, nothing. I was completely in the dark about, I had done nothing in my life that prepared me about how to grow this thing. And so I just was completely clueless. And, you're searching for information about how to make this work. There's so much out there. Some of it's great. Some of it is not so great. Some of it they want you to pay them $600 for their course, and it might be a great course. I'm not saying that a $600 course might not be great, but I mean, but you don't know. If you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know if it's going to be great for you, right? And $600 is a lot of money to spend. And so I floundered. I will admit, I totally floundered at the beginning. I was like, I feel like a fool. When I first started, I was like, I feel like I'm talking to an empty room. I feel ridiculous saying, this is what I'm working on today. And it's like, I just feel so stupid. No one's listening to this. But you have to just do it anyway, because you don't know until you start, and you just do it. And you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to post dumb stuff that one person likes. You get 3 likes, and you're like, woohoo, that's more than yesterday. And you have to find your groove. And when I really started to kind of start to figure out, the question I found myself asking was, okay, who would want to buy this? And it's the whole, target market question. But it's like, and I had tried different techniques, like you come up with your ideal customer and her name is whatever. And it's like, that didn't help me. That whole thing, like she likes the color blue, that didn't help me. I finally just had to say to myself, okay, look, who stitches? Who would want to stitch? And I thought, okay, stitchers, obviously, but who else? And I thought maybe quilters. Do quilters also do embroidery? And sure enough, they do. So I started picking out hashtags that were quilting hashtags. Even though I'm not a quilter, I'm not selling quilts or quilting patterns, there's a whole avenue of quilters that like to also stitch, either add it to their quilts or just stitch on their own. And then are there sewers, or are there cross stitchers that want to come in? So I had to ask myself, okay, who am I trying to talk to? So then I'm going to pull every hashtag I can think of in to try to capture them. And then the question about what to post when you don't know what to post, like I said, I think everyone struggles with that. There are times when I feel like I just have nothing going, nothing that would be worthy of posting. But I did start to tell myself early on when I'm working on something, and like something as simple as like I'm stitching, oh, I got a knot. Okay, well, that's a common occurrence, right? And it's a very mundane thing, a knot in your thread. But I started asking myself every single step of what I was working on, could I make this an Instagram post? Could I make this funny or interesting or something that they will relate to as a stitcher, as someone who is also, doing embroidery? And so I found myself finding lots of things that you would think would just be completely no one cares about, but stitchers care about, right? So I get a knot and I'm like, okay, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to go take a macro photo of this crazy knot on the back of my stitching. And then I'm going to make a post that says, oh my gosh, everything was going great. And then I flipped it over and I turned over my hoop and look what was waiting for me. Ha ha ha. Which is silly, but you'd be surprised. Those little things like that, I can get the most response because so many people say, oh my goodness, me too. Those things are crazy. I don't even know how to deal with those. And, I didn't even know it was back there. Or I get those all the time. How do I avoid that? And then you have this conversation with all of these people that are like-minded, that are doing the same thing you're doing or interested in the same thing you are. So it's such a great avenue to just the little mundane things in your everyday work, whatever it is you're doing, painting or jewelry or sewing or quilting or whatever you're doing, there are things that you're doing every single day that other people are experiencing as well, and figure out a way to make it an Instagram post. I mean, honestly, I made a post one day. I had ripped out a bunch of stitches. So like I just had like this fuzz all over my table, and it was summertime in Texas. Summertime is really hot, even with your air conditioning on, and my room was hot. I was like, man, I'm so hot. I'm going to go turn the fan on. I turned the fan on and the stuff blew everywhere. And I was like, well, that was dumb, right? But I made an Instagram post about it. It's like, trust me, don't turn the fan on after you've just ripped out all these little stitches. And it was just a picture of a pile of fuzz. That's all it was. But it got a laugh. It was a little witty. People were like, oh my God, I've done the same thing. So even the most mundane thing can be an Instagram post. Not every post has to be, the grand flat lay or the, here's my newest offering for my latest pattern. I mean, obviously you have those too, but to create lots of content, which is what Instagram likes, which can feel like a real slog sometimes. Just think of everything in your daily, work that they might relate to is what I'm trying to say.
Everything is content,
Yes, everything.
Yeah, you just have to lead this very, very stitchy life, It's like, yeah. That's great advice. And then you do these stitch-alongs on your blog where somebody can buy the kit, or they can buy the pattern if they don't want to buy the full kit. And then you kind of take them through the process on the blog. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, for the stitch-alongs, I've done them a couple. When I first started doing them, I was like, I don't know, is anybody going to want to do this? I did them a little bit differently. Now the way I do them is they're completely free. Sometimes a fairly elaborate pattern, but I try very hard to make like new techniques that people wouldn't have normally done before, so that creates some interest in it. And so the way I do it now is they're completely free. You can go on my blog and you can, when the stitch along starts and however many parts it is, it'll have the pattern and the instructions for each part, and it's all free. You can buy all your own supplies and transfer the pattern yourself, and you don't have to buy a single thing from me. If you want to, you can buy the kit. And so that's good for both people that, either in another country and don't want to pay the shipping for a kit, or just already have their own supplies. Or if you want to buy a kit from me, that's great. I'll sell you the kit too.
I see.
So it's
okay.
good both ways. Yeah, I've kind of found a way I like to do it. That way I can offer them something, and honestly, it's good for me because it's a good seller. But I'm also offering something for free so people don't feel like it's like one big push for them to buy from me. It doesn't have to be. But the neat thing about stitch-alongs is it brings together this huge community of people that all are looking, and there's something about the mindset about we're all doing it at the same time. I mean, yeah, I sell patterns all the time, and to this person, and they buy one, and that person over there buy. But something about doing a design all at the same time, and I post, people's progress photos on my stories, and I'm talking about it, and today we're working on this and this part, and here's a new technique. It's a really neat sense of community, and I love getting people's progress photos and seeing what they're saying. Oh, I had never tried painting on fabric before, and I just did it, and I really love that technique, and here's or I did it, and I did this step wrong, and I had to figure out a way to fix it. And so I post all that, and everybody's sharing each other's progress. It's just a really, really fun sense of community, and it's building that community.
Yeah. And I think building a community around your brand is super, super fun and just wise also. That's great. And doing that through free content, is one way to do that. So that's great. But you also have a product that backs it up. So people can, can buy the product too. That's great. So people can head over to Lolli and Grace and check those out. And there's one going on right now. So, All right. So, Anne, I want to make sure we get to your, recommendations. So your first one is Huga, which is, I did not know how to pronounce that. So I will confess that I just went and looked it up before we talked, but it's this concept of coziness, that, kind of makes people feel, comfy and cozy. So tell us, how you kind of got into doing this or got into this idea.
Well, I wish I could say I live the Huga life, but my workroom is a constant mess and chaotic, and but I love the concept, and that is, building yourself a space or a place that is comfortable and cozy for you. It's coziness that brings you happiness, I think, is sort of the basic definition, and it is a Danish concept. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm like this, like very ethereal, Ooh, no, I live a crazy life with a messy house and a dog with dog hair everywhere and a kid. And, it's like crazy. But I love the concept of seeking that, looking for a way to find, even if it's just like for 10 minutes a day, like a place or a something that brings you, that makes you feel cozy. It could be like hot chocolate or, your cup of tea or your coffee or, coffee break, whatever. Just striving for that. I don't achieve it, I don't think, but I certainly strive for it. And I think I mentioned in the same thing, it's a looking for a moment of joy, even a little bitty small thing of joy. It doesn't have to cost any money. It's just being open and aware to the daily joys that crop up in your life amongst the chaos and the pandemic, which is not a minor thing, and everything else going on. Finding the more you seek out those little spots of joy, those little moments of joy, the better you feel, the happier you are. I think there was a guy was it at Google or Apple or one of the big massive companies that was like his job. His job was and I think he's written a book about how to exist in this crazy, chaotic world, but how to be happier in it. And it is to seek out joy. And so, if you take a 5-minute walk and you look over and there's a bee buzzing around a flower, you're like, that is a significant moment of joy. Or if you clean one corner of your desk and you look over and you're like, wow, that little clean corner brings me joy. Or that's a Huga little corner for me. Those two things together, I think, are really interesting concepts and something to strive for.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just taking that moment to look, totally. Because it's there. And like organizing your markers in rainbow order, it's like these little things.
Yeah. Anything. Yeah, in fact, one of my favorite patterns that I did, and I rarely stitch something twice, but I actually did this one twice because I liked it so much. It's a quote I love, and I'm going to go make sure I look at it. Life is a series of thousands of tiny miracles. And I love that quote because you're like, the miracles don't have to be huge or life-altering. They can be just the tiniest little thing that can be like, that was a little bitty miracle. That was really cool. I feel better now. So yeah, it's a mindset for sure.
And then, yeah, totally. And then you wanted to recommend a YouTube channel, and I've watched these videos before myself, and I just watched one again last night. After you recommended them, I refound this channel. So this is a Chinese YouTuber. Her name is Li Ziqi. And she lives like in the countryside, and she gardens and she crafts and she cooks. And it's just beautifully shot and so relaxing.
Very relaxing. I kind of stumbled across one of these one day. It was first thing in the morning, and I don't even know why it came across my Facebook feed, and I clicked on it, and I just sat there mesmerized for the whole 7 minutes. And I thought, what a wonderful way to start my day. After I've kind of checked the news and all the stuff going on, I'm like, I'm just going to go over and I'm going to watch this video. But yes, her story is, I think she's maybe in her late 20s now. She lived in the city, and then I I think she moved back to the country with her grandparents, and now it's her grandmother. And so now she gardens and cooks and plants food, and she sews and she does embroidery and she builds walls and she builds furniture. I mean, like these very intensely hard physical labor things. And it's all, there's no, some of the videos I can't find a rhyme or reason. Some seem to have a translation at the bottom, some don't. Which I've discovered I almost like the ones that don't have the translation better, because I'm always asking myself, well, was that salt or sugar she used? Or was that, what was that? What was that? I have no idea what that was she just put in that dish, but that's really interesting. But it's beautiful what she's doing with it. It's nice not to have the information constantly being bombarded with the information. You just sort of take it in visually. And there's always some music with it, some nice relaxing music and beautiful countryside. And yeah, it's really fascinating just to watch her do whatever it is that she, sometimes it's all about tomatoes or corn or,
it's very ambitious.
Yeah,
That's one thing.
Her story is interesting. I did see a little thing about her where when she first started, it was just her filming. So it was just, she had propped her, I don't know if it was her phone or, her camera or whatever. She just propped her camera and then she would go in front of it and she would walk by it. And even though now that, I think she's like the highest paid videographer or, whatever, YouTuber from China, but I think she has an assistant occasionally now, but she still films them in the same way. So it still looks like it's just her putting her camera on the ground or on a little stand and then she does her thing. So it's still a very sort of a simple visually stunning, but she kept to that same aesthetic, even though she now has someone helping her film. But yeah, it's relaxing, and I've gotten my husband hooked on him. He when I first showed him, he was like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then now he's like, hey, Lazy Chi has a new video out. Let's go watch it. And I'm like, okay. So now he's excited when a new one comes out.
That's funny. Yeah. And then you don't really play phone games, it sounds like, or games on your phone, but you like Monument Valley. And my kids play Monument Valley as well.
Yeah, I find if I ever do start playing a game, I end up with a headache and I have a crick in my neck and my hands hurt, and it's like, this was a waste of time. But the one game that I did find very captivating was Monument Valley. I know it's been out for a while, so I'm way behind the times. I think there's a second edition, out, and that was a couple of years ago. But yeah, it was just it was challenging mentally that to figure out the puzzles, these architectural puzzles with buildings that turn, and you have to unlock secrets to it. And her story, Ida's story, is very, it's like, why is she on this quest? I don't really understand, but I'm just going to be patient and see it play out. The visuals were beautiful. The colors were interesting. I love color. I have, a long history with loving color. Just really interesting. It's the only game I ever, well, maybe except for Angry Birds way back when, but really I ever stuck with was Monument Valley.
It's funny because several of my podcast guests have recommended that game. So I think it appeals to artists. It's just interesting.
It really must.
Yeah. Well, Anna, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
And you've been listening to the Craft Industry Alliance podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. Craft Industry Alliance is a community for craft professionals. When you become a member of Craft Industry Alliance, you get in-depth coverage of craft industry news, the opportunity to connect with fellow professionals for advice and support, and access to an educational library filled with ideas, tools, and resources to help you as you build your business. Join us at craftindustrｙalliance.org. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.